He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
TUKUA, 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 TUKUA hi.
This week on TUKUA, we attended the premiere of feature film Mārama, a Māori gothic horror written and directed by Taratoa Stappard, starring Ariana Osborne. The film tells the story of Mary, or Mārama, who travels to the UK to find out about her whānau.
She's on a quest to find out, who am I? Who do I come from? And that's, I think, a question that a lot of people can jam with.
Nau mai, haere mai, and welcome to TUKUA, an intergenerational arts podcast presented by 75-year-old arts activist and academic Ngāhuia Te Awi Kotuku.
Necrophilia, incest, bizarre notions of Māori sexuality, utterly bizarre.
Gen X sculptor Brett Graham.
So it's Māori in England rather than English in Aotearoa. It's so much blood in that film. I mean, it was, as I said, it was like the complete opposite of Whale Rider. It's like the horror version of Whale Rider.
And 24-year-old stand-up comedian Kura Turuwhenua.
And I leaned over to him and I said, well, it's no bloody Bridgerton, is it?
Each episode, one of us chooses an arts event and makes the others come too. So what could possibly go wrong? Oh, and then there's me, Catherine Graham, the producer. I get to keep them all in line.
TUKUA, 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 TUKUA hi.
Brett, you've just seen the film, just seen Mārama. First thoughts, reactions?
I'm still shaking. You come out of the theatre and you can't help but to feel that kind of power. So I'm still shaking over seeing it. She was great. She did a great job.
Ariana? Yeah.
No, those stories need to be told because, you know, how Māori interpreted what they saw when they went to England. And, you know, there's that scene there, she's obviously expressing the mana, or she was talking about the mana that women carried here as opposed to in England.
Yeah.
Where they were sort of property. So, yeah, it's great to see us entering that kind of genre.
Kura, initial responses to Mārama?
I honestly don't even know what I think about it. It's like the movie ended, but just so much happened. And I was like, I don't even know what I feel right now.
It was a lot, right?
Yeah, it was like lots emotionally and lots like blood and icky, yucky, gory stuff, but also a lot of like sort of brainy character relationships and reveals and things that I was like, oh, wait a minute, that guy, I thought he was this guy, but actually he's that guy. And
Ngāhuia. So, initial reactions to the film?
I wasn't surprised by the very light smattering of applause. It was a curious and disturbing experience. Necrophilia, incest, bizarre notions of Māori sexuality, utterly bizarre, assimilating the overkill. As a gothic horror fan from adolescence, I've watched a lot and I found this production intriguing. But as I said when I opened, I wasn't at all surprised by the very muted response.
I also spoke to film producer Ricky Lee Waipuka Russell, who many of you may remember from her iconic role in Boy. Did you ever think, now how long ago was it that you did Boy?
Oh, like 13 years ago?
Did you ever think 15 years ago when you were Sharane that you'd be producing your own feature film?
Back then, Carl, no, absolutely not. No, I had no idea that if someone had asked me 15 years ago that I'd be here, I probably thought they were taking the piss. My role on Mārama was co-producing with Charlene George and Rosie Hasanova. I had a lot to do with developing the scripts, a lot to do with tikanga and reo and just safeguarding all of the taonga that we have in this film. For many, it's quite confronting. Yeah, we had a lot of protocols put in place to just,
Keep everyone safe.
Yeah, exactly, to keep everyone safe.
I know it's been really well received. It's gone to TIFF and then to lots of 15 or 16 film festivals around the globe. How do you think the reaction's going to be here in Aotearoa?
Well, that's the thing, right? It's always bringing your taonga back home for your own people is the biggest one. So I'm excited, but probably the most nervous for my own whānau to see this and see the mahi that we've been putting in. But very, very excited. I think it's going to be a conversation, regardless.
TUKUA. TUKUA.
The TUKUA panel reconvened the very next morning. I was hoping everyone had had a good sleep, undisturbed by gory nightmares. And apologies as there are spoilers galore. So, Ms. Kura first. When you heard the terminology Māori gothic horror, what were you expecting to see?
I was expecting to see something really dark and depressing and like Victorian dresses. And I was expecting to watch a movie that makes me feel cold. I don't know, there's something about like gothic films. I always feel like these people are like shivering. I have no idea what it is. Maybe it's because they're always like grey. Yeah.
Well, hot baths were few and far between, so maybe it was that. So your expectation was to feel cold and feel removed from it?
Yeah, and I think I was also expecting to be really scared. I was scared of the horror part because I am a scaredy cat when it comes to movies, and I thought it was going to be like ghosty, and I really don't like ghost horrors. So yeah, I went into it nervous. Yeah.
And today?
I've come out of it, I think it was less ghosty in the way that I don't like. And so I feel okay in that way. But I feel like I'm still processing what I just watched.
Kia ora. Brett, you?
Well, like I said last night, you think about films like Ngāti and other landmark Māori films, and when they've finished, the whole audience erupts with applause, and cheers. But with this one, everyone was kind of tentatively, just because the last 20 minutes especially were so powerful and so horrific.
No spoilers here at TUKUA.
Maybe.
So yeah, like Kura, I'm still very much processing that. When Deadlands came out, for example, I think it was Tainui Stevens talked about it's a sign of maturity for Māori film when we reach into all of those genres of film, like that's kind of like a martial arts film. And so the fact that here we're embracing horror or the gothic horror, as the case may be, I mean, it shows a sign of maturity that Māori film has arrived and isn't afraid to take on new genres.
Now, huia, because I did hear you doing this a lot.
Deep breathing.
Deep breathing, and then there was a few during the film. So I wasn't sure whether they were approval sounds or consternation. Somewhere in between?
I'm still thinking through a whole range of reactions, and inevitably the academic steps into the picture. The me academic, and, for years, right back to very early Māori filmmaking by Māori filmmakers, there's been an obsession with death, with tangi, with a corpse in a coffin. In this instance, we've got the corpses walking around. Think of ones like Boy, like Ngāti, like Māori, like the Waru series, and there's always someone in a coffin, a mahara, and there's this whole fixation with death And tangihanga have defined Māori within the Pacific and I think within the Indigenous world as our one strategy to resist the missionising and Victorian processes that we've all suffered. In this film, we witness an outrageous and kind of brave, certainly cinematically interesting endgame from all those stories about death, about mourning, about weeping, about someone in a coffin, to what we saw last night. Interestingly, though, unlike the previous movies I've mentioned, written by someone who has come back to the Māori world and has a particular view of what he thinks our world must have been like.
I mean, that's the intriguing thing, is flipping the view, because we're so used to films where you have Pākehā voyeurs coming into Māori society, but there you have a Māori going and reviewing or looking at English society and interpreting through her view. And I'm thinking how fascinating that is. I mean, we could argue all day about how well that's been interpreted, but I was thinking, for example, of Wiremu Toitoi and Rereho and their voyage on the Navarra, which was 1859. So that was located exactly at the same time when they travelled to Austria and then eventually brought back the printing press. But how every deed was reported in the newspapers of the time. They were almost like celebrities.
Because for those of our listeners that don't know, Māori, and if you'd like to explain a bit, Māori, ever since there was Pākehā here, have been travelling to England or to the UK or further afield, right?
And you think that at that time Māori still had their worldview very much so intact and was still interpreting their world through their worldview.
Do you think he navigated that flip successfully?
Well, that is the question. That is the question because, you know, we don't know. We can't really pretend to know how our ancestors thought. And that is the question. We're different from those people.
You mean contemporary Māori are very different from the Māori of those times because it was such different times?
Well, exactly, because of technology. I mean, there's always been interpretations. I think of a book like Das Palangi, for example, that was written by a German who was pretending to be a Samoan chief that was reinterpreting
as you do.
German society at the time, you know, and so, again, how could they possibly know? I mean, I've heard Selwyn talk about how the old people would actually see the spirits around them and live in both worlds, see the spirits around them. So the idea that they were living with those people who had passed very much existing in the present. Yeah. Whereas other ideas like Kamua Kamuri, I believe, are contemporary ideas. And they've been contested by people like...
That's what I wondered about,
Well, they've been contested by people like Pat Hohepa. It's just too much of a cliche, you know, we walk backwards into the future because it's still portraying time as linear.
Rather
than
circular.
So it's still using that Western arrow of time to describe how we describe time. You know, so there's things like that were perhaps quite contemporary.
Yeah, well, this is always one of the pitfalls for people trying to reinterpret the past or have a personal interpretation of the past. And for him, for Taratoa we're talking about, his interpretation is largely from what he has gleaned from his mother, who was Māori, speaking to him, and his reading of accounts of his great-great-grandmother and her twin going to the UK with a concert party. Here's the film's writer-director, Taratoa Stappard, talking about what inspired him to write the script for Mārama.
I grew up outside of Aotearoa, and really the only Māori in my life is my mother. And Mum would tell me and my sister stories of our tupuna, and for me it was the wahine that were most interesting. And in particular, my great-grandmother, a lady called Rangiriri Strew, and her identical twin sister, Te Reorewa Strew, were very interesting to me. Yes, identical twins, so there's that. But also, born in 1880, they were pretty, I would say, culturally defiant and independent, should we say, because by the time they were 16, their Pākehā father disowned them because they had been expelled from their third school. So here are these two young Māori women, fluent in English and te reo Māori, who wanted to embrace their culture. So they went out and took on identical mokokauai, which I think in 1896, at the age of 16, would have been pretty culturally defiant. And then they went on to become guides, very popular guides, at whakarewarewa, and my great-grandmother led a concert party, I think you would say, of young Māori wahine, including my kuia and her sister, my great-aunt, on a tour from New Zealand through Australia and America, all the way to England. This is in the 1910s, a concert party called Princess Rangiriri and Her 9 Māori Maidens. And I was like, that's interesting. I've seen the photos and they're fascinating and beautiful. But really I was thinking, what was it like for my great kuia to travel all the way to England, in the end, essentially to dance and entertain those people who had and were colonizing her people, right then and there, like within her lifetime and then and there. You know, a proud, staunch Māori wahine with a prominent mokokawai. What was that like? And that was part of the inspiration for, let me try and evolve a story about something I feel I can speak to, which is the element of coming around the world and being, a foreigner.
Māori, since the beginnings of us as a people, have always been travellers, adventurers, nomads, seekers. So in the 19th century, there was a real hunger to get out. In the late 18th century, with the whaling ships, men got on those and they went to New England, they went to Plymouth, they went to Whitby. Māori travelled, and we still do. And I think that was one of the good things in the film, that you got a sense of that adventure, of that movement, of that getting out there and taking over the world. And from the time of the Crower that went to Austria for the printing press until the visitation with Jenkins, the missionary, in 1860, of a massive group of really entertaining Māori who went to the Isle of Wight and met Queen Victoria. Māori have always travelled. We tend to travel in groups. We're still doing it.
So, Kura, what was your understanding of what you were seeing?
I don't know if I'm just like not a brainy person when it comes to watching movies, but I get lost real fast. Also, not to blame him, but I was sitting by a guy called Louis Davis, and he's
the influencer dude.
the influencer content creator. And every time he would get stressed, he'd lean over and say something to me or like make a joke.
Well, interrupt your viewing like you were at home in his lounge.
Oh, wow, yeah. And it didn't help. We were sitting in the very front row on these silly ass like bed things.
Oh, so you couldn't help but share the space.
Yeah, and it was just like...
Well, that's good if you got scared, right?
Yeah, and it was like, it would be kind of crucial moments in the pod.
And what sort of things would he say?
I don't know, he'd just make a joke to sort of break his own tension.
Oh.
But it's not like I told him to stop or anything. I thought it was funny. There was moments where I'm sure they said like really important things. And I was like, oh my God.
Oh, you'll just have to go again, Kura.
Yeah, I'll have to go again.
The pace, it was relentless. And not only as the narrative evolved and unfolded, but just the layering of it was relentless. You never really got a break. It was pretty full-on, Brett.
No, it was really interesting talking to him afterwards.
Taratoa being him.
Yeah, because he was talking about how when his mother went there, she was embarrassed to be Māori. When she travelled to England, I mean, she's 86 now, but they made her feel embarrassed to be Māori. And of course, like most immigrants, the desire is to fit in. And so, to me, he was flipping a lot of those cliches on their head and trying to address that. So you think about even Rerehau and Toitoi when they went to England, and, you know, obviously the newspaper would make remarks like, how far as savage habits have been civilised by mixing with polished European society. Those kind of remarks would happen. So one of the climaxes, of course, was that party scene where very much dressed like the Savage Club or the Polynesian Society. They think that they're honouring the culture by dressing up as what they think is Māori, and then they're mocking Māori in that party scene.
For those that don't know, can you just explain what the Savage Club was?
Well, they used to dress up as Māori, you know, and perform these mock hakas and so on. And, of course, they've revoked that response in her. So that's, again, an example of flipping those things on the head, where it's the Europeans who are savage. I mean, it's intriguing when you think 4 years after that film was supposedly made in 1859, you think about here, the invasion of Waikato occurred, for example, and Taranaki before that. And then at the same time in London, you had the first underground station. Britain was sucking up the resources of the rest of the world, including here, and then creating what they called high society.
Victorians did believe that they were civilising savages.
But they also believed that Māori were the premier
Race.
example.
Of how well we
Yeah.
could be civilised.
Yeah.
Because we adopted those things that suited us.
You
or-
look at the early records and the dandyish, extraordinary, overdressed encounters of Cook and his crew with the chiefs in Te Upuko-o-Tika, Tolaga Bay, and further up the island at Rāwhiti, and someone like Parkinson drawing them, painting them. And they were always noble and aristocratic and tall and beautiful and charming.
Which is part of the trope in this film, right? Because that's the character that Toby Stephens plays. So for the interests of our audience, our male lead in the film is played by Toby Stephens, who of course is Dame Maggie Smith's son. So he brings with it not only a whakapapa of acting, but there's probably long history of British theatrical talent and skill and, and perspective. How successful do you think he played that role?
I think he did it remarkably well.
Very restrained.
And very convincing.
I thought he was fantastic. His performance was insane. I did not like when he came on screen every single time he came on screen, which I think is really just shows that he did a good job to me of just playing this man who has this
Obsession.
like weird fascination with Māori.
I think of the piano
Oh, yes.
and the character in that.
Sam Neill or Harvey Keitel?
Keitel.
Oh, yeah.
And that same kind of rugged but charming but cultivated but essentially driven by his gonads character with an obsession for dusky maidens. Another point, though, which was a counterpoint to his character, and I thought it was really clever, Jack Fenton.
Yes, yes. Grotesque.
And I think probably one of the more grotesque aspects of the film was that party, was the drawing room.
It was extraordinary, that scene.
It was like a depraved upper crust molly house.
Yeah.
There were
yeah.
just so many drag performers, so many badly dressed, offensively ugly white people. There wasn't a single nice-looking Pākehā woman, not one. There wasn't a single Victorian beauty.
Well, again, it's to flip things on the head that the civilised are the savage. To me, that was the point of that film.
Yeah.
When you see how grotesque their behaviour was, given licence, and how dignified she was by comparison. And of course, the complete misunderstanding, even though she abused them, none of them got it, and they applauded, just to show you how difficult those cross-communications are.
Although, did you see there was that close-up of
Jack. And he got it completely.
Completely got it.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was interesting, and that's when his relationship changed towards her, because before that he'd been very patronising and condescending.
Yes.
And after that he had more, well, I'm going to say respect, that might be a bit strong, but he had more fear of her.
Yes.
And it's all these, fancy Pākehā people dressed up in drag and costumes, and some are in blackface, and all you have to do is look at how they're dressed to feel like sick in your stomach about what's happening and the situation that she is being forced to walk into as the only Māori person in the room. And not to bag on my mate who was sitting next to me.
But you're going to.
Well, actually, this one was my turn to be distracting, and I leaned over to him and I said, well, it's no bloody Bridgerton, is it? It's quite different. But he said something back to me which I thought was a good point, and he said, do you think that Pākehā people, when they watch this, will understand what it is that we feel as Māori when we watch this scene? And I said to him, I think that anyone who's not Pākehā will understand what it feels like just to be othered or to have to be on defence. And I also thought, I'm sure Pākehā do understand, because it's not like it's exclusive to Māori to feel that disgusted when people are making fun or disrespecting you and where you come from. And so it was a really, really powerful scene in understanding her position as being alone and being the only one who can defend herself, who can defend her own mana, but also the mana of her people who are not there. And because these Pākehās have been running around in the film, you know, trying to hook up with Māoris and hook up with people they pretend are Māoris and unchecked. And then suddenly this woman comes and, you know, she's meant to be an object of affection, but her intentions are about as far away from that as humanly possible. One thing I really loved about that scene and also the whole movie was the costumes, the sets, the props. They had this awesome, like, painted whale in it that really just amazed me. The things that I take out of movies are really quite random. I don't think I realised that Ariana was the lead.
Ariana has done a lot of contemporary roles.
Yeah.
Her most recent one being probably Madam, that a lot of people know, or
I've seen that.
Tangata Pai, where she plays very contemporary sort of roles. Whereas this was very much a Victorian setting. And I spoke to her earlier and we talked about how she prepared herself for the role.
I just tried to learn as much as I could about the history of the time, where she was brought up in New Zealand around 1850s, and then also in the UK, what it was like to be a woman then and what it was like to be an Indigenous woman then. Also, I'd been listening to a podcast called In the Envelope. It's called The Actors Podcast. I just heard an interview with Lily Gladstone, who is, an Indigenous actress overseas. And they were talking about this methodology where you use words to entice sort of triggers for performance.
Yeah.
And so I used that practice, which is I gave myself some words, did some physical explorations, and used that to be the core of the character. Some of those words were ancestors, seer, colonised.
Putting the frock on or the period costuming generally on and changing your whole look, that must have been really helpful as well.
Yeah, definitely, especially because it was such a long process to get into everything. I think maybe even longer than 2 hours every morning to get into character. And so that's such a special time to sink into the day. And I had a wig and, different dresses with corsets and layers as they do back in the 1850s, which really, helped me get into the period.
So tell me about the frock, though, the frock that we see on the posters.
Right.
How did that help?
The first time I put the dress on, it is restrictive. And then as Mary, or at this stage in which she is wearing the dress, Mārama, leans into her power, becomes looser and looser, and she releases layers underneath the dress so that she can use it more tactilely. Yeah.
She always looked so stunning.
Oh, beautiful.
And I loved she would have like these woolen blankets around her shoulders. I was getting really excited by the costumes and everything that she
they
wore.
were great.
They were so well thought out.
You know, and that creamy pale throat in the red frock and no adornment on the neck, but these long earrings. You know, there were sort of details like that which I thought really worked.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was incredibly beautiful. And yet it wasn't the beauty that sustained the role, it was her talent. And you
And
could
her
see
intensity.
that.
Yeah.
Well, Taratoa made this interesting comment that when she was performing that kai ora, that she did one take and it was amazing. But then Ngā Huia, who's one of the consultants from told us something, and then she performed it again.
Ariana speaking about the kai ora or derisive haka she performs and the note she was given by cultural consultant Ngā Huia Kopa.
We did the haka. I performed the haka once, and then Taratoa asked if I wanted to do it again, and I just connected with Ngā Huia to see if there was anything else I could do, and she told me to weaponize the dress or use the dress as a weapon, and I think I really resonated with that. That was an easy catch, so then I said, okay, let's do it again. Did it one more time, took the note, and yeah, that's the haka we have in the film.
Well, men, of course, pick up these mere, but women would weaponise essentially what they had, and that was her clothes. So she grabs her dress and uses that as an extension
Which was
of her
the
body.
note.
Yeah, so I mean that
Weaponised the frock.
weaponised the frock.
No, that's
Amazing.
whakapuhane.
Really? Is it?
Yeah.
What does whakapuane mean?
Whakapuhane is when you
Exposing.
expose yourself.
Ah, right.
And I've seen it almost happen between Tainui and Te Arawa.
As a insult?
By women.
By women.
By women.
Yes.
As a gesture of utter contempt and derision. It is the ultimate insult.
I think she deserves to be really celebrated and to be really proud of that performance, actually, because she carries the whole film.
TUKUA.
What's your recommendation, Brett?
Oh yeah, I think it's important that people see it, and the fact that we're still trying to process it now shows you what a great film it is.
And I think that if you like watching a spectacle and you don't mind blood and gore and feeling a bit yucky, I think that you should watch it. And also, this is a weird one, but I would say that people who like White Lotus might enjoy it. Not that it's the same as White Lotus vibe-wise, but the ideas that it's exploring definitely in line with that. And I love White Lotus so much. So in that aspect, I actually really enjoyed watching Mārama, that exploration of, you know, the merging of cultures and the uncomfortability and also of wealth. And I think that did hit it for me, actually.
There were elements of it that I thought were really impressive, like the sound, like the costuming,
Cinematography.
the cinematography, the talent of the actors. There are elements that I engaged with, but the storyline still bothers me.
I thought we'd give writer-director Taratoa Stappard the final word.
Like, I've seen the film now in 10 different festivals in 8 countries. It's screened in 15 festivals since the world premiere. Obviously, here in Aotearoa, it's a home audience. I'm fully expecting a much more rigorous dissection of what the film is attempting to do. But my only hope is that it provokes conversation, kōrero, discussion, and maybe just shines a little bit of a light on some patches of history that perhaps some people might not be aware of.
TUKUA. TUKUA.
At the time of recording this episode, Mārama is screening in theatres across Aotearoa, and we encourage you to get along to experience the film in a cinema and make up your own minds. TUKUA was made with support from the Creative New Zealand, New Zealand On Air, and RNZ Arts and Culture Podcast Co-Fund. The creative producer is me, Kath Graham. Line producer is Parihuia Makai. On location recording by Kahukura Royal. Strategic advisors Yana Tinahu Owen and Rosabelle Tan. Ngā mihi to RNZ Podcasts, Justin Gregory, and studio operators Ben Pearce, Dan Hurley, Phil Benge, and Jeremy Ansell. Follow and listen to TUKUA wherever you get your podcasts. Mā te wā!
TUKUA. TUKUA.